Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest secured a great point against Arsenal at the weekend. Can they build on it and add goals to their game? Is Lorenzo Lucca the man to do it? We'll discuss all that as well as one confirmed exit and another possible one in the company of, first of all, Michael Temple. Temps, afternoon, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, fellas. Sorry about the lateness, which is my fault, but suitably happy after what I thought was a really good performance at the weekend.
Are you hungover? Were you out last night? There's a morning WhatsApp that suggested you were. No,
I was suggesting that I was keen on pizza because you were offering to buy us one. I
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
having any particular hangover concerns this morning.
That's all right. Yeah, I've said I'll pay the bill for a night out. So, yeah, just to look very magnanimous and generous. So thanks for teeing that up, Temps. Pete Blackburn, how are you?
Gobsmacked. Can't believe you're paying the bill. Still reeling from you mentioning that you were going to get your wallet out. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring any thoughts together for this podcast because I'm all over the shop.
You'll do your best. You'll do your best. David Prutton, how are you this morning or this afternoon?
Good. I'm good. Just this afternoon. I'm good. Lovely to see you all, chaps. And as you say, a good fighting point on Saturday night.
Certainly was. Temps, kick us off. What did you make of it in general?
I just thought that defensive solidity was back. And we talk about Dyche's impact and the coaching of the things that he's done historically. He has been good at making teams more resilient. But what I've seen is what I expect from Oleksandr, Murillo, Milenkovic, Nico Williams and Matt Sells. I thought they were back showing the kind of desire to defend, making amends when they made a mistake. Murillo closing down Gyökeres in the second half. I just thought that everything that was the defensive hallmarks that we saw time and time again last season were back for the first time in a long time. And that's why we had such a solid base. There's lots to fix. We don't look anywhere near as threatening on the break as we did when that defensive solidity was allied to finding a way to score goals. But I see a way forward now. And I think that if we can recruit the kind of 9 that Chris Wood was last season to ally with that defensive solidity, we're in a really good position. We frustrated Arsenal. They battered far better teams than we are at the moment. But I saw enough from that back four and the keeper to suggest that we're going to be far harder to beat than we have been.
We'll discuss strikers as we go. There is some news on that front potentially. I mean, expanding on that, Pete, we went into the game so worried about set pieces and they stood up to it. We went into the game worried. I'm not quite worried that they weren't up for it or they weren't with the manager, but I think I wanted to see that. And all the things that I thought was sort of the best case scenario bar winning, I think we saw. How enthused were you or not?
No, very. As you say, I went into it just wanting to see a performance that could stir a little bit of belief, and I guess in me personally, but also in the team after a few rocky performances. I was perfectly happy to put the result aside, but I wanted to see a sort of a plan that we were committed to and carried it out with a bit of intent and intensity, which is exactly what we didn't do in games like the Villa one, for example, and that's exactly what we got. In the end, I think, as Tem says, it felt like a performance much more like the good days of last season. And perhaps no coincidence that the side, I guess, with the exception of Igor Jesus, was, a group that had produced those sorts of performances before. Probably no underestimating the impact of Oleksandr coming back and completing that set of 5 players that have been so reliable for us at their best. So yeah, much more intensity than Villa game. I don't think we allowed Arsenal that sort of easy passage into our box and playing endless football around us there like we had done in that game. Kept them much more at arm's length for most of the proceedings, and then I think we showed more quality than we have done in turning defence into attack. Whilst without those sort of ruthless transitions, we were much less sloppy with the ball, which has been a real sort of characteristic of our play recently. Sometimes it's felt like these players didn't even know each other, so such loose touches and passing behind other players and all that sort of stuff. But it was much crisper and much better. And I think maybe having had a bit of a rest showed as well. I mean, Elliot Anderson was back to his absolute imperial best. I was thinking if I know our Silicon Valley overlords are working on those glasses that we'll get with all of our pumping everything straight into our eyes. And if they come out, and indeed I can afford some, I'll be just playing YouTube highlights of Elliot Anderson versus Arsenal. And I think constantly going to sleep with that in my eyes. So there was so much to like about it. I'll try not to go on, we'll talk about some of the individuals and stuff, I suppose, but, Sells back to making big saves, Anderson, Sangare patrolling that central midfield and just making everything feel so much more solid. Callum Hudson-Odoi looking a lot more sort of sharp, gliding up the pitch in the way that he used to, and linking, which is nice to see again. As we saw a bit of that in the past when they were both on the left. So yeah, really, really positive. I think it's the sort of performance that gives me hope that we can build. Is that defensive intensity and that back five with the other lads in front of them working hard is the sort of foundation stone of any success that we've had at Premier League level. And I do believe that you can build on that, even for all the struggles we have creating chances and issues with the striker and all that side of things. I think if we can get that basic right again, the confidence and the momentum of that can flow through the team, and it will allow us to be, I think, maybe more precise in the way we try and open games up and just do it with a bit less fear. It's just so many times this season that we're trying to get on top, and then suddenly we lose the ball, and we're not as solid as we used to be, and then it just sort of seeps through you. I think there's a sort of fear about it. There's a vulnerability. But if we can get back to that, then it gives me hope that we can have a positive end to the season.
When you saw Prutz Man United absolutely steamroll Man City, I mean, that was the most one-sided 2-0 I'd seen. Then West Ham win, Leeds win. There's some pressure on the players. Did you look at the game pre-kickoff and think, Forest is going to go under here or not?
No, I wasn't too wary of them going under. I was wary of the quality of the opposition that can look and consistently have looked the strongest team in the Premier League so far this season. Obviously, given where they are in the league, that reflects that. So there was a slight wariness of that, concern probably, if you like. We're not worried. It's between now and the end of the season, going off Pete's point, then there's still plenty of time. There's still plenty of time to mess it up. There's still plenty of time to make sure that you can enjoy as much of the rest of the season as possible. But these results are going to come into the equation, and they're going to come into the reckoning for Forest. So no one would have seen the West Ham score coming in. Leeds have looked way more defiant ever since kind of off the back of seeing them at the City Ground when they were pretty poor, to be honest, and Forest dispatched them pretty straightforwardly. So not in the sense of that. I mean, again, I think it would have been a good game to get up for at the City Ground on a tea time. You know what I mean? Full house, lots of noise. I was watching it. The atmosphere looked fantastic. And you needed those players that have been so very reliable as a kind of combination to do the jobs. And by and large, they did. I mean, one of the best saves I've seen, I think, from Sells, just utterly unbelievable. He saved it, and then I was sat watching it because we were watching our EFL game at that time. So we had them both on in the studio and having a joke with Luke Chambers saying, typical goalie getting up and shouting at his defence. And then you watched it back and you went, oh my word, that is absolutely outrageous. So it was amazing. And it was one of those games where against the champions elect, everyone's got to have a pretty decent game. We'll come on to the chat about Arsenal whinging about not getting a pen, which is nauseating at best. But yeah, it was a battling point against the best team in the division. So it's the positives that are taken forward from that, as you say, with that quick transition. Not necessarily there. That's probably down to a personnel thing. You know what I mean? There's no jet-heeled Elanga anymore, but there's still plenty that can cause the opposition problems, and a vital point for confidence, I'd say, as well.
It does lead into the pen bit a bit, just to tee it up, Temps. We spoke on the post-match show about how Sangare made a big difference immediately, and I totally agree that he's earned his place in the team. He's done really well. I don't think we've spoken enough on the podcast until Saturday about the difference Oleksandr makes defensively and increasingly as an attacking force, hopefully. But I don't think you can underestimate how important he is getting that back five band back together, can you?
No, first of all, you trust him as a defender. So he's not abandoning his post. First and foremost, he prides himself on the clean sheet, being a good one-on-one defender. And he just has that totally relaxed style, body shape. If he's being got at by a winger, and it was a high-quality winger at the weekend, he's going to do that job. But then beyond that, he's so calm and confident on the ball that the centre halves are happy to give it him. The keeper's happy to give it him. pivot in centre mid's happy to flick it off, having received it from the keeper. It just means that there were times when I observed certain Forest midfielders not as happy to give the ball to Nicolas Savona in space, and they are of Olaryna. They trust that entire back four. Milenkovic is the one that you'd probably suggest isn't a ball player, but being surrounded by 3 ball playing defenders is a massive positive. And as we've seen him get fitter and sharper over the past few weeks, we've seen more overlapping runs and him offering more service to the winger in front of him. So, yeah, credit to Olaryna. It's no surprise that he's got back to this level of impact in a football game, because he was so consistent last season. That consistency has been replaced by Nico, who's arguably been our best player, I would suggest, over the course of the season. Having them both fit and available is so important to the manner in which we can impose ourselves on the Premier League. I think he'll be rested for Thursday night, but ink him in. He's going to play every game he can between now and the end of the season in the Prem.
Definitely.
It's his personality as much as talent. I felt, going off Tempest's point, nicking everyone's point today, is you watch him and he makes you feel relaxed. I think as a football fan, as someone who we've watched them obviously quite a lot over the last couple of seasons. He's really brought his personality that dovetails in with Milenkovic and Maria, and as you work your way across there and backwards involving the goalkeeper. He just, and with a great respect to how the team's worked without him or attempted to work without him, and there's some good players obviously that drop into that position. He just fits, doesn't he? And he fits because he's performed very well to a very high standard and helped to create something at Forest, which when he's there, it's almost kind of subconsciously, all right, box that off, done, that's sorted. Don't have to worry about that for the next 90 minutes. He's done and dusted. So it gives you a nice comfort, and the fitter that he gets, as you say, Temps, the better and more impactful he's going to be.
It's amazing how quickly you just take him for granted again, isn't it? And I think that does say a lot about the bloke as a footballer and as a person. And actually, I think one of the reasons why maybe he does just sort of sail by without us necessarily always picking that out, especially given that we've not had him for half a season and it's such a big difference. I think he's an enormously extravagant and sort of ostentatious guy off the pitch and the sort of heart of all the fun, I guess. Actually, on it, he's quite sort of businesslike. Really, he's not that extravagant a footballer. I mean, he's 2-footed and he can shimmy up the pitch and stuff, and there's a bit of flair about him. But really, he's a proper one-on-one defender who just does all of the things that you need him to do in quite an understated way. I think it will probably be a pretty defining aspect of the season, getting him back, to be honest, if he stays fit the rest of the season. And it is a proper pleasure to have him back.
Excuse me. Thank you very much to Adam for signing up for membership. Really appreciate that, and anyone else that is a member. Very good of you. Let's just talk about this penalty briefly. I'm genuinely baffled how this is even much of a discussion point, Temps. I watched it at the time and thought there was nothing in it. I saw Sky Sports News discussing it today. Dermot Gallagher, I thought he might say there was, but he said there wasn't. I mean, I don't know. Am I mad? Were you worried it was a penalty or not?
I don't think a Forest fan, an Arsenal fan, a Forest player or an Arsenal player thought it was handball in the ground. The pressure from Elliot Anderson has nudged his arm forward, right? So that was, I don't know how that would be interpreted if he had made a thicker contact with the ball, but no penalty for me. And I'd like to think if I'm putting myself into having empathy as an Arsenal fan, as an Arsenal fan would, I think they wanted a penalty. I think if they're given, it's another step in this slippery slope towards referees being able to make decisions with what they see with the naked eye. So no penalty for me, but I did have that sinking feeling when the screen came on the slide came on the screen, and we all thought, what's going to happen here? But I think all of the analysis since has been pretty consistent that the correct decision was made.
You do worry when that screen comes on, because it's still, even though it's technology, it's down to humans to make a choice, and someone might see it as a penalty. But yeah, Anderson knocked into him, and I just didn't see it. Just quickly, Pete, is this just Arteta being a manager and deflecting from his own team being unable to break us down more than anything? Yeah,
I think I have to try to calm myself down before answering a question like this, because it's as frustrating a sort of incident as I think I can imagine with football. It just drives me mad. I mean, I hate VAR for almost every reason that can be conceived of anyway. But one of those is that slowing down decisions and showing endless replays from different angles and an incredibly slow pace is just a ridiculous way to regulate behaviour and decisions on a football pitch, given that everything happens with intensity and pace and decisions are made in a moment. And you can judge things like recklessness or malice or whatever in normal time. You don't need slow-mos to show you that sort of stuff. And it applies the same to a handball like this. And watching it slowly roll down his arm is pointless. What does that tell you about whether a movement is natural? Slow-mo isn't natural, is it? So it makes no sense whatsoever. I don't think it's a penalty as per the laws. And I think more importantly, it shouldn't be in a sort of spiritual or philosophical sense, or however you want to describe it. You know,
spiritual penalty.
It just shouldn't be a penalty. You know, lots of things change about the laws of the game and whatever, but this is one of those things that never should. And it reminded me, I think, was at the very start of the VAR time when there was just handballs for everything, and it was dreadful. That was such a grim period, and I definitely don't want to be going back to that. But yeah, sorry, on your point, I mean, if football managers, and I will aim this particularly at Mikel Arteta, who is one of the more sort of prominent examples of the gripe, if football managers are any class whatsoever, they just look at themselves and look at their failings and the failings of the team that they organise and motivate when they don't beat a side which, you know, has a wage bill of less than half of theirs and doesn't have the Champions League revenue for years and years and years, and doesn't have enormous commercial income and the sort of magnetic pull of the capital and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's not a level playing field, and any judgment of who deserved what or earned what in a football game should, in my opinion, take that into account. So just look at yourselves rather than blaming the refs or VAR or whatever else you can think of. And I should say that applies to Mikel Arteta, who's a grim, moaning Burke and is horrible to watch doing his moaning with his sort of pallid face and his whole Captain Black vibe. But it is a principle that should apply to us as well. And, you know, recently I think we've been guilty for blaming refs, and we should have been looking at ourselves. So I'll be clear that applies to everyone.
Yeah,
the most annoying thing about it is the fact that I'm just rereading some of his comments here, and it's they believe they should have been given a clear penalty, and that's been quoted as what he said, clear penalty, which is just rubbish. It's clear. We all know what would be a clear penalty, don't we? You know what I mean? We when you stood at there screaming at the TV that you've seen something, or even if you're in the ground and you're up on your feet screaming because it's a clear penalty, that after 47 replays is not a clear penalty. And then when he's talking about how the law's been implemented and saying that the PGMO are wrong, well, they're not really. It becomes subjective because it's the definition of, yes, it's hit another body part before it hits his arm, and then the words control and deliberate come into it as well. Control and deliberate are subjective terms. So the referees looked at it, VAR's looked at it, and it's not a penalty. So I think Declan Rice's reaction was the more pertinent one, slightly more foul-mouthed. I mean, I'm not judging him for that at all, but his frustration was we should be beating Nottingham Forest on our own terms, which if you want to be champions of England, then a team that's just above the bottom three, you should be beating with the quality that you've got, with the abundance of attacking talent that you've got. But they didn't. So that's when you talk about fine margins. That's not a fine margin. That's a correct call that didn't go in their favour. So that's why there's sour grapes to it. So it's strange, yeah. And you try not to look at teams too much and pile onto teams too much because of how they act. But I think sometimes that Arsenal as that kind of side don't really cover themselves in too much glory. But then there's a lot of Premier League football that we all watch, which kind of leaves you scratching your head. And VAR, for better for worse, it's here to stay. And my word, is it sometimes the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen the AFCON final. There's no VAR was involved in that. That sounds like the maddest thing ever.
From what it was. I mean, I didn't make a beeline to watch it for another reason, and I didn't realise it was on at that specific time on a Sunday night. But then on several different WhatsApp groups, as people are kind of disbelievingly, but I mean that's to the other end of the extreme when you get a team being told by their own boss to walk off because the decision's not gone in their favour. It doesn't cover anyone in any glory, really, does it?
No, true. Right, we'll talk about the attack and trying to score more goals in 1 minute or less than that. We'll take a word for the Trent Nav Braga Thursday night. You get a free pint of Managerial if you watch the game at the Nav and get there before 7 o'clock. Potentially, I don't want to say nailed on, definitely will, because I don't want people coming back at me, but I think you can. And Sainsbury will have all the build up at the Nav. You can watch it on the outdoor screens over the road as well. I've got that on offer for you, and you've got pies available from £10. So you don't need to book. Turn up on the night, enjoy the game there. If you're not in Braga, to enjoy it. Are you going to Braga? Are you going to Braga, Thames?
I'm in Braga. Yeah.
More than 5 hours this time, like Seville. You're actually going to
24 hours. I think I'd be part at 9 a.m. I'm back at 9 a.m. But very much looking forward to my first trip watching Forest in Portugal.
Should be good. Dan sent me a picture. Dan Cook, he's at the airport boarding a flight with Rob Jones and Anthony Taylor as well, I think. So,
what a lad's trip that is. Those two and Dan Cook having a great time.
Huge crack.
The conversations that they will have, yes, certainly. Right, let's talk about the other side of the game. Obviously, great stuff defensively at the weekends. The challenge now, I guess, is to build on it. And Mark Sutherland's put a stat in our WhatsApp group. There's loads of stats floating around. I think this one is probably the one we most need to address. This is in terms of big chances created and XG per shot, which I know is really boring, but it's about the quality of chances that we're creating. And under Nuno and Ange, we were ranked 12th for big chances per match, 1.75, and 11th for XG per shot in the Premier League. Under Dyche, it's 20th for big chances per match and 19th for XG per shot. So those numbers are probably the starkest ones in terms of where we rank in the league table. Is that, Temps, something that we can remedy? Are we a striker away from it? And we'll discuss Lorenzo Lucca, or is there a more fundamental work that we need to do to build on this Arsenal performance now?
Well, I think the first thing I take from this slide is there aren't too many Google images of Forest managers smiling this season. Nuno and Dyche, you're looking a bit down and out here. Now look, this surprised me actually, because you apply a bit of bias to it, and for me, I'm so much higher and more content on the Dyche era than where we were from weeks 1 to 8. But Mark attaches a lot of relevance to this. Chances and chance conversion is obviously a cornerstone of football. And last season, I don't think we were particularly good at chance creation, but we were extremely good at chance conversion. And Chris Wood in particular was deadly. So this tells me a couple of things. One, we have to address through recruitment. So I don't believe that Igor Jesus is going to be a 20-goal striker. And I think we need to look externally to find that player who's going to convert more of the chances that we create. From what I've seen, Sean Dyche wants to play a brand of football where we cross from deep at times, we involve the wingers, we bomb the box, and we need to have a slightly different profile of striker to nudge that away, or empower the 10, the defensive, the more defensive midfielders, the opposing wingers to crash the box when we see a winger gearing up to get a ball in there. So I was surprised by these numbers, but then when I look back and really think about where we're heading, have we become a more attacking team under Sean Dyche? Do we look more likely to score? Frankly, we don't. We just look more defensively solid now that the best personnel are available. So, yeah, it was a big surprise to me. And I think that he's going to have a real challenge in making us a more free-flowing and attacking team, unless there's some positive recruitment. But I do have total faith in the back four to allow us to get back to winning games 1-0 and 2-1.
When you watch us, Prutz, do you think put Chris Wood in that team and we'll score goals, or is it more how the way we're getting the ball to the striker?
It's not as dynamic, is it, as it was last season? But that's last season now feels like ancient history, doesn't it? And that's a personnel thing, that's a confidence thing. That's a way of approaching games that the first port of call for when Sean came in was to work from the back forward, wasn't it? Make sure that foundation is solid enough that you're not going to be leaky. And to by and large, it's when the best players are back at the back, then Forest look better. I think the situation with Chris and what he's done for Forest, I think stands him in good stead. It's just whether we're looking at a player that had quite a prolonged purple patch. And I mean that with the greatest respect to what Chris has done, because he's phenomenal with the goals that he scored, especially at Forest. So there's an element where you kind of go in, was he in the right team at the right time with the right players? I sincerely hope not. I'd like to think that he steps into this team and he's serviced in the right possible way. But it's not as free-flowing as it was, I don't think. When you look at it, you're trying to put your finger on what the buffer is with that. It's hard to tell, really. Is it back down to confidence? Is it back down to being as efficient as they were? I suppose those XG numbers, and I know that XG can. It depends what you love about football and what you appreciate about football. But XG can be really quite illuminating if you're looking at a team with your own eyes in the stadium thinking, well, we're doing all right. And then you look at the chances that create and thinking, well, you're not giving too much for the strikers or for the more attacking players to try and convert. That's when I go back to fine margins about what Arteta was talking about. They're the fine margins that make a difference for whether Forest finish just above the bottom three or mid-table.
What do you think about the style? Do we need someone who is going to mirror Chris Wood a bit more closely, or do we need to find an alternative attacking pattern that focuses less on crosses into the box?
But I think, and again, it goes back to the personnel terms, because what Forest were good at was, and when you say it's a relatively simple thing, that doesn't mean to say that it's simple, if you know what I mean. Very, very quick players that had good delivery into the box with fullbacks that were more than willing to get up with them in support. And then you had a player who, again, more often than not, I think what Chris Wood has done for Forest up top is be in the right place at the right time. So there is an element of that. I don't think there's any lack of, and that's not the question really, is it? Any lack of effort or endeavour with regards to getting the ball forward. I just think the quality of the attacking unit isn't as good as it was. Whether I'm more than willing to be discussed into a corner that's not necessarily right. And you talk about the players that are potentially coming in. Yeah, decent, but jury's out until you see him in a red shirt at the City Ground, really, isn't it? And whether that you've got a team that's pulled together and working in a way that's going to do the best for that particular player. Like I said, you've got a fella that leads the line now who is physical, who has seemingly grown into the role. But in a Sean Dyche team, and I hate to use that phrase, in a Sean Dyche team, because I've got so much respect for the way that he goes about his job. They are built. They're not built to steamroll teams, are they? At all. And that's with the greatest respect, they're built to be competitive, to stay in games and to be tight at the back and maybe nick ones and twos going forward. So that element of what we saw with Forest at their absolute best last season is boxed off as a slice of history, I think, now. And by hook or by crook, you'll get Forest towards safety. Might not be pretty, but I trust in the sense that they'll do good work at the back and be able to grow into what they want to do going forward, rather than it looking a mess at the back and thinking, well, Forest aren't going to outscore teams 3-4-3 in games, are they? You know what I mean? So it's quite a conundrum. But I've got the greatest patience and respect for Forest fans that are there week in, week out. And it's absolutely right. It costs a fortune to watch Premier League football. And if you sat there going, do you know what, I'm not really enjoying this, then absolutely speak up.
I suppose, I'll tee up a question for you then, because then we'll move on. But as you say, Noah Langer obviously is a factor. But now you've got Sangare back. Now you've got Aina back. Can we get fullbacks beyond wingers? Can we get back to what we did see under the first age of Dyche? We'll talk about Lorenzo Lucca. Are there the ingredients to play what we want to see now or not?
Yeah, there could be. I think the obvious answer to Temp's question is both. So we do need different attacking patterns. And I mean, Sean Dyche speaks a lot about mixing things up, but actually that's not really something we have seen. All we've seen really in recent weeks is a lot of crosses sent into the box, actually often quite slowly after an extra few touches have been taken, or the wingers cut back in, often giving the defence time to get set, which particularly given that we don't have enormous box presence and we're often playing against teams, who are big centre halves who are very comfortable with that, doesn't feel like a particularly impressive strategy to me generally. I think there are sort of 3 or 4 ways that we could make improvements relatively quickly. One of them is in terms of recruitment. I think part of Thames' question was about a Chris Wood style striker. I don't think it has to be someone who's the same as Chris Wood, but what we do lack at the moment in our forward option in my sort of reading of it, is someone with proper movement in the box, someone who has a sort of subtlety to the way they go about trying to find space to get the ball. I think that was the sort of most special thing about Chris Wood is he's not really the sort of player that people actually, the way that people talk about him. Really, what he was brilliant at is these tiny little movements in the box that just give him a little bit of space, and then his finishing was so precise, whether it was with his feet or his head or whatever. That's really something we're missing massively. Igor Jesus is very sort of obvious in the way that he does things, I think, and not only with his movement, but also in the sort of shooting opportunities that he takes. And you see so many of his shots blocked at source, basically. And I think it's all very deliberate and a bit too obvious. I think the other aspects are, in terms of sort of movement and box crashing, we basically don't have any of it. And that's not going to help, given that we've just got one striker up there and then somebody crossing it into him. I think, as I talked about, we need the production needs to be much more mixed. Firstly, I think if we're going to put a lot of whipped crosses into the box, which is, it is a strategy of sorts, I guess, although we know that historically that's a really low percentage chance of creating goals. But obviously, if you do it well, it can be useful. But I think it has to be quicker. And I don't think you can give the opposition defence time to get set and ready to react to it. But also we need to mix it up. And we've got wingers who might not be the sort of rapid, but they can definitely link up to get in behind, and they can pick out clever balls across the box, layoffs, cutbacks, that sort of stuff. And we're not really seeing much of that at all. And then the other side, sort of building on the point that you said, Matt, about having players back now, is I think there is something to be gained from sort of building a cohesion and togetherness that hopefully will come quickly with a lot of players who played together a lot. And for example, the sort of pressing work that Dominguez does that helps us keep teams like Arsenal out, that's also a tool that you can use to win the ball higher up the pitch and get yourselves in good positions to make an impact on the score sheet in your favour. So I do think there's a sort of, it's like a mosaic, I guess, of opportunities to improve. I don't think it's solved by recruitment or whatever, but I think there's a sort of picture with lots of different things going on there, but not massive. I don't mean they're massive asks really.
It's quite a pertinent point that you make, Pete, because you're looking at a team that, and every time I've watched Forest, particularly obviously this season and last, Morgan very, very happy on the ball. Elliott, of course, very happy on the ball. And you can tell that they look for each other. There's a lot of intricacy that can be attempted in and around the 18-yard box, which then possibly surrenders the fact that you're not going to get as many numbers into the 18-yard box. Going off your point, Pete. Callum down one side, of course. You talk about Nico. Nico's a bit more of a hassler rather than what Callum does down that side of the pitch. And then options off the bench. Omari's a very good player. He's just not proven in the Premier League in a long stretch. So I don't know how you see the best of Omari Hutchinson without playing him more. So there's an element of what Sean needs to do with that, whether he trusts a player that in this situation makes it slightly different. You know what I mean? Maybe there's not as many chances being taken because they're very thoughtful about defensive work, which again sounds dull, doesn't it? But it gets, slowly but surely, it gets you solid enough and confidently enough to move away from the bottom three. But then you need to be able to create, which is where that ability and the recruitment and Doy, McAtee, players that are all very comfortable on the ball, but whether they've come and really lit things up by the fact of whether they've either not had the minutes on the pitch or they've had the minutes on the pitch and not quite lived up to what perceived expectations were, time will tell. And I was just looking through the comments, and there's a lot of frustration in waiting for players to come good. And I absolutely get it, especially when you're seeing some serious cash being laid out on footballers. You think, well, when do they come good? What's the future that we're buying for? You know what I mean? Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? Is it 18 months down the line? Because it's about the here and now. It doesn't help when you've had 3 managers in very quick succession, does it at all? Because there's an element maybe where Sean's looking at his squad going, yep, like you, not sure about you, don't really know who you are, move this up. You know what I mean? So there's an element of that working it domestically and in Europe. So there's so many things for him to try and contend with. And this is not me defending Sean by any stretch, because he's thick enough skin to be able to know that what his job is about performance and results. And there's going to be an element that aren't going to like what he does, no matter what he does. But as long as it's successful enough to get Forest as safe as possible come the end of the season, that's when that real time will tell with it. But it's intriguing because there are some very, very, very good attacking footballers for Forest, but whether, as I said, by virtue of tactics or confidence, that's kind of diluted that a little bit. That's got to come back to the fore, and that's the player's responsibility to go and create.
Yeah, those conversations will come in the summer, I'm sure. Now they happen every single day in the chat about what happens in the summer with the manager. Certainly, Pete mentioned subtle movement there and intricacy in the box. So let's talk about signing a 6'8" striker from Napoli on loan. Lorenzo Lucca, 25 years old. He has played for Italy. Had a really good season last season with Udinese. He's struggled this season at Napoli. And now loads of reports from Italy, from the guys who said we were going to sign Dan and Doy, are saying that we're trying to sign him on a 6-month loan with an option, not an obligation to buy, for around 30 million quid. Adam Summerton, friend of the show, TNT Sports commentator, had the following to say about it. You can see it on screen, so I'll summarise it. But as I mentioned, he is very tall. He did very well for Udinese last season, and he is obviously good in the air. He's played at just about every level in Italy and in Holland. Very self-confident, bordering on arrogance, disobeyed orders on taking a penalty last season. A determined competitor, physically strong, good feet for a big man, cliche, but if you want to get the best out of him, you need to put good quality crosses in the box. A 6-month loan.
just see Pete's head hit the deck going, oh my God, everything that I've just said. We're going to be pumping it in from 70 yards.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, Temps, that is the thing. It sounds like we're going to play the same sort of style and get crosses
even
into
more.
this man, and more than 52 against Everton. And second balls, or he heads it in the net, that kind of thing. But exciting reality. What do you think about with this Lorenzo Lucca signing?
It feels like a good January signing. I don't think this is quite considered enough to be the permanent answer. And if we were sat there having reflected on an entire season and looking for a perm signing, probably a slightly different profile. But for what is certain for me is that Sean Dyche will be our manager between now and the end of the season, and inserting someone like this into the style of play that we're seeing, where high volume of crosses at least are being snapped up by centre halves. This seems like a very simplistic, but potentially quite an impactful way of getting more from that. I was very high on Igor Jesus. I think that I haven't seen a player that does more with his back to goal when a goal kicks in the air, and he's absolutely determined to win his impact with the centre half and to occupy them. I've seen him pull balls out the sky, but bottom line, he's not scoring enough goals in the Premier League. So we have to try something different. This guy's ready and available. He's desperate for game time. He's been at good clubs in Serie A, and he finds himself bench warming far too often. He's a better option than Taiwo. So I'd support this loan signing and love to be convinced otherwise. I don't think he's the Forest striker for the next 2.5, 3 years, but it's a good move for now. And yeah, an arrogant striker, like, aren't they all? Shouldn't they be? Shouldn't they be the most selfish, self-obsessed individuals in the changing room for us?
Correct. Yeah, they're awful people. They're awful people, but they keep everyone else in jobs.
I suppose that's the thing. I don't know, Pete. I suppose that's the thing. Like, January signings are tough. If Strand Larsen isn't going to come for 40 million quid, this guy gets us to the end of the season. We don't sign him, but we're still in the Premier League. It probably is job done if he scored 4 or 5 goals. But it's not. You don't sound very excited, Pete. Let's put it that way.
Well, look, I'm not mad about it in a positive sense, but I'm also not mad about it in a negative sense. I think it's fair to say that it's not an ideal position for anyone to be in January, looking to find a striker who scores enough Premier League goals to keep you up or whatever. Like, that is a hard enough task at the best of times, let alone when everyone's desperate and what have you. So it's not, I don't underestimate the difficulty of doing that, and I wouldn't rule him out as being someone who might be able to. He's obviously struggled recently, but there's a lot of context there, and he's actually not played an awful lot of football at all. Aside from what Temps and Prutz are saying about the guy, the sort of the characteristics of strikers, Adam Summerton describing as bordering on arrogant makes me feel slightly uneasy, given that Adam Summerton is about as sort of considered and gentler sort of describer.
That's rich coming from Adam. He's not showing confidence.
I mean, if he's saying that, it sort of makes me think: is he massively dreadful? But we'll see. Yeah, look.
I tell you what, though, Pete, it is something of in like a cyclical nature. 20th of January 2023, the big Kiwi steps up, rocks through the door at Nottingham Forest, doesn't he? Does pretty well. I'm just saying, it's the 19th. If he joins tomorrow, I was going to say that he'd have big shoes to fill, but I presume if he's 6'8", his shoes are pretty big anyway, aren't they?
Well, I'll tell you what. When that signing was made, I certainly wasn't being very kind about it, and thought some pretty dreadful decisions had been made. So I'll just repeat that and hope that I'm proven to be an idiot once again. But the one thing I would say is he is someone that the club have tracked for a while. There have been rumours in windows previously, and if that means that George Sirianos has been involved in tracking him and following progress, then that would give me a lot more faith, because he's somebody who I believe in his work and would sort of trust his judgment. So fingers crossed. I think the key thing is if it's an option and not an obligation, then I'm fine with it, because we have to be careful about spending that sort of money and what have you. But it gives him an opportunity to see whether there can be an impact there, and 25 million quid or whatever it is will seem cheap in the summer if he does have an impact, but we don't have to pay it if he doesn't. So, I don't know how much better you're going to get in January, to be honest.
I think this might be a discussion later in the week, but not for today. The other interesting thing about Lucca is his agent is the same as David Fratesi, who plays for Inter, and he's strongly linked with us as well. So that might be one to monitor. Adam wrote about him as well, and he sounded, I don't know if more excited is the right phrase, but he's box to box. Sounds like he fits what we need. An Italy international as well, 26 in his prime. So that's one to monitor about whether we do that one. We'll talk more about transfer business outwards in 59 seconds. Global Telemetrics advert. This is up there for one of the classic Global Telemetrics adverts.
Oh yes,
certainly. Here we go.
Gavin reporting live for Global Telemetrics outside a possible vehicle theft. The young lad is now walking to his car to start it in this cold morning. He's going to go back into the house and wait for the car to warm up. This could be dangerous. Now the thief is approaching the car. He's going to open the door, he's going to sit right in, and he's going to drive that car straight away. There you have it, folks. The car is now gone. Unbelievable, Jeff. Another car is gone. How's he going to explain that to his insurance company? Do not leave your car unattended this winter.
Wow.
Classic of the genre, that was. I love it. That's one of my favourite global.
Well, it's so tempting to tap him on the shoulder and say, "Did you see someone just nick my car? Can you could you stop him next time?
Stop nicking that car." I know. Oh well.
We
stuff.
we found the nation's next great broadcast journalist anyway. The absolute charisma of that. Prutton will be fearing for his job.
You know it.
Yeah, he's a good guy, Gavin. I like him. I like it. I like that advert. Click the link in the description if you want to find out more about Global Telemetrics and what they can do for you. Right, transfers out to discuss before we wrap things up. Not for, just a quick word. Jamie McDonnell has gone from to Oxford, I think, for about £1 million. I'm not seeing any word of a sell-on fee, but I would assume that is one. He's a good young player who's done really well for Mansfield Town on loan, and also done well for his country and Colchester. Have you seen him, Prutz, at all on EFL stuff or not?
I'm not, unfortunately. I'd love to lie and tell you I had, but I haven't.
I haven't either, so I can't say what I think of it particularly, but I know he's well thought of, and in a sense it's a shame. 21, he's Northern Ireland international, defensive midfielder.
£1 million. That's not to be sniffed at. That
he's had really, really rave reviews from Mansfield Town fans who are sort of interested, sensible people. So I hope there's a buyback clause in there as much.
And let's be honest as well. Given who's in charge at Mansfield and how they run stuff, they know exactly what type of player they want, don't they? I mean, incidentally, when I was very much a sidebar, went away just after Christmas and was filling my face at this buffet, which you could probably tell, over in Tenerife, and this tall fella comes sauntering over, and I thought, what's going to crack off here, because I'd just nicked the last hot dog. And it was Steve Chettle who came over to say hello, which I was gobsmacked, because I thought, there's no way Chet remembers me from 25 years ago. But no, he was looks exactly the same, but a little.
Was he very bronze?
He was just the right level of bronze. And then what happened after that was bless him and his missus, and they were there with another couple. The poor sod bumped into me about 8 more times, to the point where I walked round this corner when they were walking to the pool, and even his wife's face was like, "Oh, fuck." And I was like, no. So I'm so sorry. And she was like, "Have you give him his number? Give him your number." Then I said, "Well, I was going to ask just to keep in touch, because Chet's was lovely to me way back in the day. I've got such a vivid memory of him being so utterly lovely without us in the youth team, and being just a nice, solid fella that was obviously pushed out by David Platt when he came in, unfortunately. But he was so lovely, and I think so we were there over New Year, and I've given him a big hug. I mean, by the end of it, he's probably thinking, I hope it's another 25 years before I bump into David Prutton, because, oh my God, he wouldn't leave me alone. But he was just so lovely and nice, and really set a benchmark for what you would assume an older pro should be. But I've got his number, everybody. I'll flash it up on air so we can all text him and keep in touch. But needless to say, he was glorious, but I think Mrs. Chettle had enough of me by the 12th time I'd mistakenly bump into them again. So, Forest legend. Forest legend.
Thank you very much to Corin for recommending Global Telemetrics. There you go. Trust them, not me. Or trust me as well if you want. Right. The other one is
not with securing our cars, surely.
No, actually, don't trust me with that kind of stuff. Too much pressure. Oleksandr Zinchenko temps. It looks like he's going to Ajax. Crucially, Fabrizio Romano's tweet said they'll cover his salary, which is what I was worried about. I mean, there's not much we can say about this other than there's no offense to Oleksandr Zinchenko, but this is good news, isn't it?
Yeah, he needs to fit in a very particular type of side that can allow him to abandon defensive responsibility or play him at a level where he can be a midfielder. Because
I've seen no doesn't have to defend.
Yeah, I've seen no evidence whatsoever that he commit to a defensive game plan. It's so important to our structure. And Olaine has made him redundant, so I think that ends the conversation. Really, he'd have got midweek minutes on a Thursday night in the 2 games we've got left in the group stage, and whether we end up being. But come the business end of the competition, he's not going to be selected in that either. So, yeah, he just become a bench warmer. I think it was a failed experiment, one of those things where a name shoots across the bow really late on deadline day and takes everybody by surprise. But he hasn't had any meaningful impact, and Ola and Nico made him redundant.
It's worth saying as well, Matt, that's saving us a couple of £1 million between now and the end of the year, which is no mean feat. And given what we see when the season ticket prices go up or whatever, and the amount of money generated, that's actually quite a significant amount. So I don't know what involvement Forest have had in that deal, but it feels pretty impressive to me to get him out. I didn't think that would happen.
No, I didn't. Not with that. If Fabrizio Romano tweet about them paying his salary is right, I thought we'd have to agree to pay half his salary or something and still be sinking 50 grand a week into him or whatever it is. I don't know.
I think they're a bit desperate, aren't they, Ajax? Things not going very well there, so I guess that might have played into our hands.
Possibly so. Just to cover a couple of other quick bits I spotted. Not a great source, Team Talk, but we were linked with Harry Wilson, which I would be fully on board with as a free agent in the summer. And staying on the Wilson theme, Callum Wilson is reportedly now Nuno's been told he's got to stay at West Ham after he scored a goal for them. So that would be a shame because he is a good player. So that's rounds up the transfer news. Wrapping up how we're feeling, temps. West Ham, we mentioned them there. They got the win, which I wasn't surprised at all. The circumstances were painful. 5-point gap now. Leeds got a win. How are you feeling about it all as we wrap things up?
Yeah, the groans when those late ones went in for Leeds and West Ham. Sorry, Pruts. I know you got put in 2 camps. We're audible. Where I was watching sports news at the time. How do I feel? I think that we want to make the bottom 4, bottom 5, bottom 6, don't we? So the battle I've got in my mind now is clinging on to Leeds. There's a massive game coming up in a few weeks' time, which will have a great determination on how that battle plays out. It's within West Ham's capability to get things going. There's enough players in that squad that can kick on in an attacking sense and convert chances. Equally, we've seen Wolves become defensively solid in recent weeks in a way that they weren't at the start of the season. So look, it's not over, but I think points on the board are key. And there are some big home games coming up against Palace and Wolves and 1 or 2 others, which will determine our survival this season. Far rather be where we find ourselves than West Ham. I ultimately think the bottom 3 is the bottom 3. but there's some big fixtures coming up that will just allay any fears. So still as confident as I was. I think the swing had West Ham won and we lost would have been more telling psychologically. But we feel good about our weekend's work, and I think we can look forward with confidence and purpose.
At the weekend, West Ham are at home to Sunderland in the early kickoff on Saturday, which I can see West Ham winning because Sunderland are so good at home, but less so away. Burnley are going to pick up another 3 points as well because they're at home to Spurs, although Spurs are actually good away from home, so perhaps not. And then Leeds go to Everton on the Monday night. So that's the picture, Pete. It could look even tighter on Sunday because we've got a really tough game, I think, at Brentford. Exceptional home record for them. How are you feeling about it?
I don't know if I can respond in anything other than sort of general cliches, really. It's definitely a sort of focus on ourselves and don't worry about the other stuff situation because there's bugger all we can do about any of it. I feel buoyed by the performance and the result from Saturday. I had started to be properly concerned that the performances were betraying certainly a lack of sort of buy-in from the players or a lack of sort of cohesion between the staff and the players in terms of how we were playing and what it might all mean. But that was the sort of performance that makes me believe that there's plenty of fight there as well as the ability to execute a game plan. Obviously, it was a very specific sort of game plan and we will have to, another very, very obvious thing to say, but we're going to have to do things differently in these upcoming games against sides where there's more pressure on us getting a positive result of a victory than just trying to escape the game. And that's been our sort of Achilles heel, I guess, is trying to get points from games where we're going to have more possession and we've got to break the opposition down. So there's obviously going to be work to do, but the sort of underlying stuff from Saturday makes me feel more buoyant about it and gives me hope. As for all the other teams, I think we just have to focus on ourselves. Leeds have had a hell of a run recently. I'd be surprised if that goes on forever. West Ham are more than capable of essing the bed repeatedly, and I hope that they continue to do that or get back to doing that. But otherwise, it's just on us. We've got lots of opportunities ahead. Difficult games because they generally basically all are at the level, but games that, if we prepare ourselves right, if we have good plans and if we execute them well, then we can get points. Obviously, there's Europe as well. We're going to have to factor in some rest and some rotation, and it's not an easy challenge, but I do sort of ultimately believe that we'll be okay.
Yeah, we'll chat Braga tomorrow with Mikey and Emily. There's 550 people with us, so do hit like before you go, by the way. Should have plugged that more, sorry. Prutz, final word to you. How are you viewing it slightly from the outside looking in?
Yeah, I agree with Temps in the position that Forest have got themselves in. There's more than enough quality in a fight. It is going to be a case of that between now and the end of the season. Late goals that do frustrate in equal measure because of what Leeds have been. Going off Pete's point, they when I saw them at the City Ground, I thought they were going to be nowhere near it, but they have comprehensively turned themselves around. So there's a real fight in that. And As for West Ham, Burnley, and Wolves, it's tough to see them coming away from where they find themselves in that level of the table. But nothing that Forest can get complacent about. Brentford, a very good team who were the better side against Chelsea at the weekend, but for obviously Chelsea being more clinical as when those situations arose. So that's a team to be very, very, very wary of, I think. And as for Europe and what teams are being played, hopefully it becomes, the adventure carries on, of course, but it becomes a real way of getting players into form and properly knocking on the door of what Sean has got at his disposal in the league.
Yeah, I think Braga will be really interesting. What we do team wise, I would still rest a lot of players personally because that's a really, really tough old game. But we'll discuss that more tomorrow, as mentioned. Then Wednesday is with Matt Ford, and then Thursday post-match show with Mark and Sam Collins is the plan for that. So if you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe, consider membership or Patreon to get early access to some stuff like the Matt Ford interview and a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify would be great. Michael Temple, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. Sorry, last question.
I've got one as well.
No, go on, that's fine. I normally don't want to keep you guys too long, so no, carry on.
I just can't see the trapdoor being higher than 35 points. And that would require an upturn from West Ham from this point. They find themselves 17 from 22. well, 13 more points for us gets us past that trapdoor. And we flirted a week or two ago with, how can we accelerate away? As things stand, with Leeds doing what they did at the weekend and that game to come, we do find ourselves in the bottom four and looking over our shoulder. So I think all eyes on that kind of threshold. I just cannot see West Ham getting towards a point per game average across the season, given the start they've had. So relatively low trapdoor. And I think we've got more than enough about us and the right profile of home games to get past that number. I don't know what the fellas think.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you a question on exactly the same theme, which I think Opta are currently predicting West Ham to get 33 points. I think to feel very sort of confident about where you are, you could add a couple of wins onto that in case there's some sort of mad streak, and to be very sort of conservative and cautious. So if we're aiming for, say, 40 points, I think, we got 16 games to get 18 more points.
Mm-hmm.
With 6 games coming up, Brentford, Palace, Leeds, Wolves, before you get to Liverpool and Brighton. I don't know what sort of haul you think we need there, but I think it feels to me like the priority is to try and get that number under a point a game or less. So if you can get a win or two relatively soon, and then that becomes quite a manageable place to be, I think.
West Ham's upcoming fixtures: Sunderland at home, as mentioned, Chelsea away, tough one, Burnley away, Man U at home, could be anything. We don't know what they're going to be like. They were brilliant at the weekend. Then Bournemouth at home, who were struggling, Liverpool away. They've still got City at home. They finish with Arsenal at home, Newcastle away, Leeds at home, and also Brentford away. That's their last 4 games. That's a tough last 4 games for me, unless things change dramatically. So I think you've got to be confident, but not arrogant. Perhaps, I don't know. You've got to
completely
because when Sean came in and there was that upturn, and seemingly, I think would it have been you I was chatting to, Matt, but that 4-game losing streak kind of, because you kind of doing bits and bobs elsewhere and then keeping abreast of results, it kind of felt like it crept up a little bit on people from the outside looking at Forest. It was like, broader, Sean Dyche has gone in, they're absolutely fine. And you go, oh, hang on, they've lost 4 on the bounce there. And then you think, wow, they're really close to where, in the same regions of where Forest were when he took over. So that's the thing that, I mean, there'd be no sense of arrogance with that man in charge at all anyway, will they? And I can't see there being a sense of arrogance with the players, because as much as they absolutely pulled up trees last season, excuse the pun, but they still know that this division is utterly brutal. And that's where they found themselves at the start of this season, whether it's the management, whether it's the hierarchy, all that kind of nonsense now, because it's about who comes in the door between now and the end of January, and what performances Sean gets from this side, because that's his remit, isn't it? Keeping Forest in the division. Discussions come after that about where Nottingham Forest go off the back of that, and whether them upstairs think that building on a European season is one way you stay safe from relegation. I don't know, but it's about the here and now, and those games that Pete's mentioned coming up, barring the Brentford side, who again I've got a lot of time for, not just because I know Keith and a few of his coaching staff, but because they're a very, very good team. The other ones are absolutely there for the taking, and this is maybe a little pocket of space where Forest give themselves just a little bit more breathing space before it heads down into kind of March, April and May.
Yeah, February fixtures, got them up here. Palace at home, Leeds away, Wolves at home, Liverpool at home, Brighton away. And I think Brighton's the hardest game there. Having seen Liverpool, I mean, if we can win 3 of those 4 games, we're tough. But
I think Leeds away is probably the hardest game, to be honest. It's the sort of game that we don't often thrive in at their place, which is horrible. I'd fancy us least in that out of all of them, to be honest.
But show some hope for
Friday night as well, isn't it? It'll be a big old dust up. That'll be a good game. Watching that will be. But again, it's what, and I'm not saying this to offend any Forest fans that attend the City Ground every single game. That is a very unique atmosphere at the City Ground. It's a very unique atmosphere at Ellen Road as well. So that's that you've got 2 very huge and proud fan bases clashing there, and that. I'm not saying it's down to the fans, because it's the players ultimately that have got to go and perform, but you'll have a full house there, 2 sets of demanding fans, and it's up to the players to go and perform. That's where you'll see the real metal of what this Forest side's about.
Yeah, and our home fixtures, I mean, our home form's been terrible. If we can turn that round, these fixtures should present enough opportunities to me. Palace, Wolves, Liverpool, Fulham, Villa are very good. Burnley, Newcastle, very poor on the road as it stands, and Bournemouth, who are very poor on the road as well. Surely we can get enough results there. I would hope and still believe, even though it's been a pretty awful season. So let's see how it goes. Thanks to Temps, thanks to Pete. Do join us tomorrow, as mentioned. Do hit like before you go. But if we don't see you tomorrow, hopefully we shall see you soon.